Okay, and we are recording.
I think I did that the right way. Yeah. All right, Mayor. I'll just cut straight to the chase. What's your reaction to the council vote on Tuesday?
Yeah, it was very disappointing. I thought that we had reached an agreement with council to move forward together on a path that really put some of the vitriol and fights behind us and really focused on what we see as the mutual issues facing us. And unfortunately it didn't come that way. And we're left, the three reasons that I disagreed with council on the budget was one, I thought it was wrong that they cut Chief Best's salaries and her command staff. And after the votes, most of the majority of council said they agreed, but yet they voted to do it again. I think it's wrong to cut the navigation team because I think that if we need to deal with people who are living outside. We are seeing an expansion of encampments around Seattle. And if you cut the navigation team, that is only going to increase because we will have no way to bring people inside and no way to deal with those impacts on community. And with regards to the layoffs with 100 officers, almost to a person, every council member has privately acknowledged they know it can't happen. So I'm going to focus on the future. We are delivering our budget next week. I think they expect government to do better. And we've got in front of us still the same challenges. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. It's flu season at the same time. We're very concerned about an upswing in coronavirus together with the flu. We have an economic crisis where we still have a record number of people who are unemployment and small businesses that have closed and will never reopen and others that are struggling. And we have a civil rights reckoning where we have to actually make some real progress on equity for our communities of color. So that's where I'm going to focus my resources. I'm hoping I will continue. I meet with council members. I talk to them. I think we have the same challenges in front of us. I hope we can join together to address those challenges.
So did you think you had a deal with the council prior to that meeting?
I did. And unfortunately it did not transpire that way. Obviously it's their prerogative to take the votes they want to take. And I do think you will see in the coming weeks that council will probably try to take a lot of it back with regards to the command staff salaries or the navigation team or how we reimagine policing. But look, I can't look in the rearview mirror. My job as mayor is to implement the laws as passed. We're evaluating right now, for example, that their clear intent was to eliminate the navigation team. And if we have to proceed on that, we will do so. But everyone in Seattle has to understand that that means you will see an increase in encampments. You will see an increase in people experiencing homelessness, and there will be no vehicle for the city to deal with that, either to bring people inside, to deal with the public safety impacts or the like. So these votes have real consequences.
So given that you thought you had a deal and then it didn't transpire, do you still think you can work with this council?
My job is to try to work with council. I was elected to govern and to try to bring people together, and I will continue to do that. I will continue to meet and work with council to see where we can find common ground. At the same time, I'm going to stand for what I think the people of Seattle want us to do and to actually make progress and not just have rhetoric.
Multiple council members on Tuesday kept talking about how the legislation was guidelines, but the mayor actually spends the money. It seemed like they were trying to make some sort of point there about what they were doing to override your veto and leaving some sort of wiggle room that you could still follow through with your intent. I'm sure you saw those comments. I mean, what do you make of that?
So I didn't watch most of council's deliberations because I was actually tending to a number of other things. But I'll say this is, you can't have it both ways. When you're an elected leader, you got to make decisions and your decisions matter. And if you vote to eliminate the navigation team, you vote to eliminate the navigation team. And if you give speeches saying you're doing that, that's what you're doing. And then you can't then look for the mayor to change those policies. So we will look carefully at what the law requires. We'll implement the law. There's some things that we can't do. For example, the cut to the command staff salaries, patently illegal. And under the charter, in fact, as mayor, I have a charter obligation to protect and honor every contract and every agreement that the city makes. And we made contracts and agreements with our city employees. So some of those, based on the counsel that I've been given, we will not be able to do. But other ones, you know, like the navigation team, we're looking at it carefully. But clearly, council voted to kill the navigation team. And if in doing so, we will be left without the only tool we have to actually reach out to people, to bring them inside, and to deal with the public safety and public health encampment issues that we've had throughout the city.
Well, help me understand then the argument that police can still respond to encampments. That if this navigation team, the navigation team goes away, that police can still go to problem areas and clear those areas if need be. I mean, what's the difference?
It's double speak and untrue. I mean, we've got guidelines under the city that require us to take certain steps, and even if they weren't there, we do extensive outreach before we move encampments. We work with people trying to bring them inside to address the public health or safety issues that exist. And it would be highly ironic if coming out of this, it was really council's position that we should eliminate the outreach part and just send cops in to move homeless people. I don't think anyone thinks that's the right response. Police officers don't, we don't. So that has never been the city's policy. I don't believe it is the right policy. And council has to take responsibility for their actions.
So I don't know if you're showing your cards here, but is this part of your budget that you're going to reveal next week, that you want to restore that funding to the navigation team, or what else can you say about your budget plans?
So a couple big things we'll be rolling out next week with the budget. I think the first one is, and rather than, you know, I'll answer your question on the navigation team, but I think really in this moment, things that the people of Seattle want to see progress on, and I think that the people protesting in the street who have raised their voices during the civil rights reckoning, is we have an obligation to not just reform and reimagine policing. We have to look at all our institutions, and we have to make deep, deep investments in our communities of color. Our BIPOC communities have been under-resourced for generations. And if you look in, for example, we've talked about it before, Chris, that a kid growing up in South Park has a shorter life expectancy than a kid just miles away growing up in Laurelhurst. That's just wrong. And so one of the signature pieces in my budget is going to be $100 million of new investments in BIPOC communities that will be guided by and centered on the voice and experience of those communities, so that they can tell City Hall for once what they need, and that they can get a long-term funding for those issues. So that is what we're going to do. We will continue to look at, and you will see changes in the police structure, things that Chief Best and I talked about before she departed, and I now work with Chief Diaz on how we start reforming the Seattle Police Department so they can really focus on its core duties. We know that we still need police. We saw yesterday in downtown Seattle a person who stabbed 2 people and was barricaded in her apartment. You need a police response to that. But there's other things where we don't need a police response, whether you need a social worker or a healthcare worker. Our our Health One response got an award yesterday. Recognize that if instead of sending police, if you can have a social worker and a medic who can work with someone who's experiencing behavioral health issues, you can have a harm reduction response. So you'll see in our budget that we will continue to scale those alternatives to a police response. We will change how the police department looks, and we're going to have a broad engagement with the whole city of Seattle as to what do we want our police department to do, how do we make sure they can continue to do what they need to do, and how do we transition some of those duties to other types of responses.
And the 100 million is separate from the 3 different buildings in the Central District that are being turned over to BIPOC community groups.
Exactly. And we've seen, you know, Seattle's changed so much. When I was growing up, the Central District was about 75% Black. And there was restaurants, churches, home, it was their community. Now it's less than 14%. And with that, you're erasing people in their background, in their history. And so reclaiming properties and making sure they stay in community is really critically important. So we've done that with Bird Bar, which has really historic roots in Seattle. And of course, before that was CAMP. Larry Gossett was one of the people founding CAMP. And we've, with the Central Area Senior Center, we sent down legislation to make sure that stays in community ownership and can serve the Black community in Seattle for generations to come. And Fire Station 6, to reimagine that. It served the community as a fire station, and now into the future, under Africa Town's lease, it will be a community center to really deal with a lot of the issues talking about. How do you bring people to have better economic vitality? So we have to continue to look for those opportunities. There's other properties that we have and other government have that we want to work to reclaim for community. But we have to also make the investments in everything from, you know, affordable housing to childcare to all those things that build resilience in a community.
Okay, last question, because I know you got to go. I didn't ask you about it last week, but I did talk to Chief Diaz about Merrick Bob on the way out the door. Suggested that there needs to be an outside chief brought in to the Seattle Police Department in order to continue with the reforms, and that based on what's happened over the last few months, that federal oversight is further away than it previously was in terms of ending. What's your reaction to what Merrick Bob had to say as he left as federal monitor?
So a couple of things. First is, you know, I worked with Merrick Bob when I was U.S. Attorney, and then now, and I have deep appreciation for all the service he gave to the city of Seattle. His work is partly responsible for why we really have transformed in the area of crisis intervention and the use of force. And so I think he's given a great service to the city of Seattle. I take his opinion like I take a lot of others. We are not in any position at this moment in time to start choosing a new police chief. And I've made that clear before, and it's true today. We don't know what our department is going to look like when we're in the next 3 to 6 months when we go through this process of reimagining policing. And so we don't know who to recruit. So I do not see us beginning a police search soon. And I think that we have seen that you can sometimes get really great police chiefs internally. Chief Best was one of those. And you can get great police chiefs externally. Chief O'Toole was one of those. And so what we're going to be looking for is, what is the department we have, and who is the chief who can come in and run that and have community confidence.
All right, so you're already late for our next thing. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Bye.
I didn't give you any short answers. Sorry about that.